Hi, it's Jill Moray for the Knitting Channel with another live web show for you. For those of you who didn't get the notice, I'm so sorry. You'll get more notice so you can make sure that you're there so you can be part of this live. Email me your questions and your comments, but do that anyway, because after the show, we are going to rebroadcast this. And I take your comments and your questions very, very seriously. We're a family here. We're we're an artist community. And I want this to be a place where we can share ideas and help each other and just have a really nice time together. So if you saw the last web show, we spoke about mistakes and not necessarily how to fix your mistakes, but when you should fix your mistakes and when it just doesn't matter. And we spoke about how some people really like having to be a perfectionist during the day, but when it comes to their knitting, they just let it fly, mistakes and all. I am not quite that person. I am someone who really likes the work to look perfect, and it's nice because it's a way to make it look perfect. It's a platform where you can really make it look the way you want. And if you don't like it, you can pull it out, rip it out, start again, put it aside, make something else. Today we're going to talk about something that actually we talk a little more about when you have to rip something out, but I want to talk to you about what we all love and cherish and just yum up as artists and as knitters, and that is fiber. We love fiber, we love texture, we love color, we love all those yummy things. And I want to talk about how you choose what fiber you're going to use for your project. Now, I had a really great person help me when I first started knitting, and there was this little store in Brooklyn where I was living at the time. And she went around with me and said, like with a basket, when you choose your colors, I showed her what pattern I liked. But at that point, it was a child's pattern and I wanted to make an adult sweater. And she showed me how you just change the thickness, the weight of the yarn and the needle size, and then it will make it a different size. And then I think the most important thing she taught me was that you can change the colors. Make it whatever colors you want. And next time I'm going to show you something that really made a difference when we talk about the duplicate stitch, which is instead of knitting in as you go, how to sort of embroider on top of it. But that's for next time, a little teaser. But she told me that it doesn't matter what colors the pattern calls for, use your own colors. So boy, did that open me up to really make my own palette. I'm not really in love with primary colors, so it was nice that I could just choose other colors that I like. But I digress. We're talking about fibers and when to choose what. Now, last time I showed you the beginnings of this little girl's dress. And by the way, if that is a pattern that you would love, that I absolutely love, I'll make that as a kit for you where you use a cotton because of the drape. Remember that word, drape, because it has these beautiful points at the bottom and this lace, and then the way it falls, it's beautiful. So let's stay with that dress. If I were to make that in a wool, it wouldn't have the drape, and it would be a little puffy. Now, I was once in the audience for a TV show it was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And you're sitting there for a long time when you're waiting for a show to begin. And I remember just kind of looking around, a little bit of a yenta, seeing who's doing what. And I caught somebody making that dress in wool instead of cotton. Now, the pattern did call for cotton, and there's a reason that they call for a certain fiber. Now, you can change, you don't have to use the manufacturer that they say for that kind of fiber, but if they're saying a beautiful worsted weight, like where you use a number 7 or number 8 needle to make that, so just use a beautiful worsted weight in whatever manufacturer you want and whatever color you want. But when it tells you to make it in cotton or make it in something else with a blend, there's a reason that they're saying that, and that is because of how it's going to drape. How can I explain more about drape? I know how. By telling you of one of my sob stories, which is I made a beautiful wool sweater and I made a skirt to match in wool. And when that skirt was done and I stepped into it all excited, I cried at how I looked. I looked like a cupcake. The thing just puffed up. Colors were pretty. It was a nice pattern. It just kind of straight pattern as I recall. I really tried to wipe that out of my memory and consciousness and everything because it was a little traumatic. But if I had done that in a linen, in a cotton blend, the weight of that would make it drape and make it hang beautifully. And that's what I should have done. And I cried when I saw how I looked, and I don't even think I tore it out. I don't think I ripped. I think I threw the whole thing out because, you know, with every stitch, it would be remembering just how awful I looked. And I mean, I looked awful. I know we're bad critics with ourselves, but I'm telling you, I looked awful. It's like when I let my hair dry by itself and I have very curly hair and my friends say, oh, let it go curly. I'm sure it's great. It's not. And even my husband, who just thinks everything I do, I'm very lucky about that, is great. He saw my hair, and when someone said to him, shouldn't you just let it go curly? And he said, yeah, not so much. She knows what she's doing. Anyway, with fiber, the drape is important. The other thing to think about is the stitch you're going to work with. Now, I made a gorgeous sweater for my brother years ago that I'm going to show you now. Look at this. Do you see that? My little name tag there. Isn't that beautiful? I got this yarn in Turkey, I believe. The brown and the blue. Now, do you see how that stitch goes? They kind of intersect. It doesn't really look like one row is this and one row is that. And that's because the stitch was something that almost made my fingers break. You did, I believe it was, because I threw out the pattern, 2 stitches, and then you pulled one over the other. Now look at how large this is, and long sleeves. Do you know how many times I had to knit and then pull the stitch over the other, knit, all the stitch? Now, it was a labor of love, so at the beginning it was really fun and really nice, and by the time I got to the back and the sleeves, I didn't want to look at that anymore. And I'm glad it worked out beautifully, and I'm glad he loves it. I'll show you one more time, and I have to send it back because he lives in Baltimore. And look at how the sleeves are joined too in this raglan. This, isn't that pretty? I love that, those little effects that you can do. And that was one thing that really drew me to that pattern, because I thought that that was just fantastic, how those seams went. I'll show you again, see over there. But I will never make this again. No, I won't, even though it's beautiful. I've been tempted, and then I'm very happy when I realize I threw the pattern out because it wasn't fun after a while. So what I'd like you to all do is, before you start making something, and a lot of people don't do this and they start, and that's why a lot of people just stop, and there's a project in the bag for years and years for the next generation to say, maybe I'll finish this or take the wool. My mother actually, she should rest in peace, made squares. They were crocheted squares with beautiful, beautiful wool. And I remember looking in the closet and always seeing and saying, why don't you put this together? And she just grew tired of it. And if you grow tired of something when you're making it, well, you don't want to do it anymore. And then you put it aside, and then you feel bad about yourself, and then you don't want to knit again, and you feel like you don't have the right? You know what I'm talking about. You don't have the right to go in that yarn store and buy more yarn because you have a project that you didn't finish. Isn't that what we do to ourselves? Don't do that. When you see a pattern that you like, especially if it's in a magazine that you happen to have, pull out some yarn, pull out the correct size needles, and start making. If it's an interesting stitch, start making the stitch. See how you like it. Like, I don't love necessarily doing a moss or a seed stitch for a blanket. That's all it is. I get bored. I like using color. I like using different stitches. I like having different things going on in the sweater, so it keeps me interested. That's why I really like using color, and I love using the intarsia technique, where you have to pick them up and drop them and then twist them. To me, that's really very exciting. So think about your fiber, think about your stitch. And then I want to tell you one more thing that I alluded to at the beginning, and that is I love alpaca. Alpaca is such a wonderful, wonderful fiber to work with. It's warm. It's as warm as cashmere. It's a fraction of the price to buy. It feels great going through your fingers. There are all different weights of alpaca, with the baby alpaca, with the little chunky, which is great. Everything is wonderful with alpaca. And it doesn't have lanolin, so it doesn't get dirty as quickly as something made with wool. Wool has lanolin, which makes it feel so good. Alpaca feels great without the lanolin, but lanolin actually attracts dirt because it's kind of soft and it has that quality that dirt will stick to it. So alpaca stays cleaner longer. It's fun. It's nice. The animals are just too cute. We spoke about last time these festivals, these wool and sheep festivals, and I went to one once where I saw these alpaca. I mean, they're funny. It looks like they're put together like this from this animal and this from another animal, and they're sweet and they're kind and they don't mind being shorn. And anyway, I was visiting a friend of mine once in Alaska, my friend Yolanda, who now lives in Lake Orion in Michigan. Hello, Yola. We are knitting buddies also. Known her for years. She's like a sister. And we just had that week that I was in there, I was living in New York at the time, the week that I was there was some kind of knitting festival. I mean, it was a small room in a local hotel where some local merchants that had the animals and then would shear them and dye them and spin and all of that would sell their wool. And that's the first time I worked with alpaca. And I got a picture of Benny, the one who gave me his beautiful fiber. But here's the thing. This alpaca fiber had not been cleaned, had not been spun in the way that, like when you buy something in the store that you know you're going to work with it, it's going to come out great. This I didn't know. It was very dirty and had specks of like wood in it. So when I was done making my sweater, and this sweater, I have to figure out who I gave it to because it's too heavy for California. But I loved the sweater, and what I loved about it is it had this detail at the neck that was a stitch. I don't even remember the name of the stitch, but it wasn't easy, and it was something if you made a mistake, you couldn't pick it up. It was like, got to start over, so you really had to focus. But then the sleeves had this cuff that came down to like in the middle of your hand, and it was open on one side that you laced up, and the laces hung. Oh, it was so sexy, and it was like kind of cropped, so your shirt came out. It was great. That, jeans, cowboy boots, fantastic. And it was so warm that I just needed a little wrap on top to go out in a winter's day in New York, or nothing. So in California, I'm not going to wear it. But anyway, my point is, and I do have one, when I was done with the sweater, I washed it. And I don't know if it was the stitch of the cuff or what, but it grew. It grew exponentially, and the cuffs came down to like here. And I couldn't just take the cuff off. I actually had to detach the cuffs, the whole sleeves, both of them, detach them, rip it out, dry it was washed and dried, and now I know that it will be just fine. I don't know why it stretched like that. I guess because it was just someone from her farm, or maybe it was the stitch, or maybe it was the alpaca. All I know is it was an existential moment for me to look at this sweater and say, do I want to rip out? Do I want to first detach? Do I want to rip this out and do it again? I really kind of sat with that for a moment. And I said, you know what? This sweater's going to be gorgeous. I love the fiber going through my hands. I love the look of that cuff. I've never seen it before. So I don't know if I still have the pattern. So I know a lot of people ask me for a lot of the patterns I hang up. I'm going to have to start going through going through and seeing what patterns I have that I'm showing you so that I can pass them along. But it was worth it. I ripped out the sleeves. I redid it with the cuff. Knitting taught me a lot of patience, which has helped me having a toddler. Because, just take a deep breath, do it. You know what the end result is going to be, which is it's going to be just beautiful. And it's worth it to just, okay, so I'm going to do it over again. But it's not going to be another one of those projects that's in the bag waiting for someone else in another generation to open up, and the waste of money and feeling bad about yourself. I made that sweater again. And damn if I didn't love that sweater. I just wish I knew where it was, who I gave it to. So To recap, my friends, think about the fiber before you make your project. If it's called for a certain type of fiber, they know what they're doing. It has to do with the drape and how it's going to look on you. Think about the stitch you're working with, because you're going to be doing it over and over again. Is it fun? Is it boring? Is it tedious? We don't want any of those things to be with knitting. Fun we want. Tedious and boring we don't want. So think about that. Try it out beforehand. Try different fibers. And then see, they always tell you to do a swatch. Always do a swatch, no matter how great a knitter you are. And this way, you can try out different fibers, different things. I don't mean exchange wool for cotton. There's a reason that they call for cotton. But if they're just saying this weight of wool, you don't have to take the manufacturer that they suggest. Try your own. Go crazy. Change the colors. Do what you want, because it's going to be on you or someone you love. And remember, enjoy the process and use your imagination, and make sure that you're doing a project that you love doing, even when you're on the last sleeve and you want it to be done already. A deep breath. Let go of some gratitude. Keep knitting with an open heart and enjoy the process. I'm Jill Moray. I'm so glad that we had this time. I'm so glad together. I don't know if that's copyrighted. And I look forward to knitting with you again.